This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Awareness Mastery online self-study program. Learn fertility awareness from the comfort of your own home at your own pace for a fraction of the cost. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/mastery for details. That's fertilityfriday.com/mastery. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 370. Welcome to the Fertility Friday podcast, your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. I'm your host, Lisa Hendrickson-Jack. I'm the author of The Fifth Vital Sign and the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Journal. I'm a certified fertility awareness educator and holistic reproductive health practitioner with nearly 20 years of experience teaching women to connect to their fifth vital sign through menstrual cycle charting, balancing hormonal health, and optimizing the menstrual cycle without hormones. I'm outspoken about hormonal birth control and its impact on fertility and overall health because you have the right to know how your body works and how artificial hormones disrupt that natural process. I host live coaching programs to help you achieve optimal fertility and health because it's important to have healthy menstrual cycles regardless of whether or not you want to have babies. I'm also a wife and mother of two beautiful boys. I know, I'm a busy girl, but I managed to fit it all in. This podcast is designed to empower you to take full control of your cycles, your fertility, and your overall health. And I'm so excited that you're here with us today. In today's episode, I'm talking about a topic that I have not covered a ton on the podcast: exercise and weight loss. And I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. There's so many different topics to cover. But ultimately, as you've gathered, especially for my longtime listeners, the purpose of the podcast isn't directly related to weight loss and not fitness and those types of things. It's more so related to achieving menstrual cycle health overall and achieving hormonal balance and, of course, fertility awareness, cycle charting. But I've certainly seen a trend, and I've talked about it and alluded to it many times on the podcast, with the effect that exercise, as well as intermittent fasting and a lot of the current fitness trends and strategies can have on the cycle. And so in today's interview, I'm interviewing Kitty Bloomfield, and I'll go ahead and read a little bit from her bio here. So Kitty spent most of her adult life dieting. She jumped from one quick fix diet to the next: shakes, fasting, keto, and low carb. You name it, she's done it. She was obsessed with food and felt like she was either restricting or binge eating. She felt happiest when she was thin, but she had to starve herself and train 6 to 7 days a week to maintain it. And during that time, she had irregular and painful periods, she suffered miscarriages, and she rarely slept through the night. She was bloated and constipated and exhausted. And for Kitty, it all changed in 2015 when she met her partner Craig and stumbled across the work of Peat and Emma Sgourakis. Hopefully I said that right. What she learned transformed her body and her health. Kitty is the co-founder of New Strength and the founder of the Win at Life podcast. And it is her mission to free women from restrictive diets, help them restore their metabolism, balance their hormones, and build bodies that they love. And in today's interview, we really dive deeply into some of the most common myths as it pertains to weight loss. And I feel like these myths have really permeated the culture. Many women kind of follow in these paths, which ironically don't necessarily lead to success. And so certainly this isn't the only way to do it, but hopefully this podcast will be really informative as to different ways that you could achieve your goals without having to lead a lifestyle that feels restrictive. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's interview with Kitty. And I'm really excited to be here today with Kitty Bloomfield, all the way from, are you in Australia?
Australia, in the Gold Coast. Yeah.
So it's night for me and morning for you.
It sure is. And I'm so honored, Lisa, that you're interviewing me on your podcast because I just love your book. And I recommend it to all the women in our program and, anyone who follows me on Instagram, because I think it's just the most the best resource around, cycle education, the effect of hormonal contraception on your body. And I obviously love that you recommend women eat liver and seafood and good quality dairy. Really, your nutrition approach, I think, is incredible, and it really aligns with ours. So thank you for having me on.
Of course. And well, thank you for all of your kind words. I'm really glad that we connected. And so I'd love to start just by telling us a little bit about you. So what do you do? Tell us about your company and how you have been supporting women.
We actually started our company 7 years ago, and it actually started with a gym. So my partner, Craig, is he's a strength coach. He's a certified sports nutritionist. And when I met him, I had just been cycling through all of the crazy restrictive diets, I'm sure like so many women do. So I'd done keto, I'd done every protocol of fasting. Oh God, I'd done low carb, just you name the diet, basically, I'd done it. I'd tried a lot of silly stuff too. Like, I don't know if you guys have this over in the States, but it's this medication you take and you poo out any fat you eat. It was disgusting. Oh, wow. I took Duramine, I drank a lot, I partied, and it was all in an effort to be skinny, basically. And sometimes I would try to be healthy. Like I would think that it was to be healthy, but really I just wanted to try and control my weight because I think I felt that if I was skinnier and I weighed less, I'd be prettier, So it all came back to that self-image and body image. And when I met Craig, I also met my now business partner in Sgourakis. So we have another company where we make pro-metabolic, really clean supplements, and we're releasing a skincare line and a makeup line. And I started working with her. She's a nutritionist, and she introduced me to this whole world of Peat eating and pro-metabolic eating, and actually eating the liver and the oysters and good, because for so long I'd cut out dairy, I'd cut out sugar, I wouldn't eat fruit. I drank almond milk, and I just flogged myself in the gym 2 hours a day. So I met Emma. She introduced me to this eating, and I was like, oh my God, everything I ever knew about nutrition was wrong. And then Craig introduced me to strength training, and I just fell in love with strength training. I competed in powerlifting, and I finally started nourishing my body with all of this great food and training for performance instead of training for how I look. And prior to that too, I had all these symptoms. Obviously you would just nod your head and go, makes so much sense, because I was just dieting and starving myself. So I had irregular and painful periods, I had a miscarriage, I had polyps removed, I had a D&C. And I'd never linked it back to the fact that I was just starving myself all the time. I didn't sleep very well. I was bloated and constipated. I just had no energy. My hair was all falling out. So all of that stuff improved. Body image improved, just happier and healthier. And then I was actually working in mining doing FIFO, and I just hated it. So Craig and I just were like, we're just going to buy into this gym, and we're going to open this gym. And we called it New Strength, so nutrition and strength training. And we did that for 3 years. And then we decided to create an online program specifically targeting or helping women like me. So women who have cycled through all of the restrictive diets, who wanted to improve their relationship with food and their body, learn how to train to get strong instead of punishing themselves with cardio. So we did that program for another, 3 to 4 years, grew that. And then Emma and I decided we wanted to do the skincare because we just couldn't find really good, clean skincare with saturated fat. So that's what we're doing now. And that's, I guess, basically, sorry, that's a bit long-winded. That's how we help women. It's an online program. We've actually got women all over the world, women from the States, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. It's awesome.
Well, there's so much that I want to unpack about your story. I mean, I feel like there's quite a few women who are listening who might have even selected this episode specifically because of that part of it, because of the wanting to make, get that ideal weight. So to go deep for a second. So, because I remember you saying also in our previous conversation, but you also mentioned it now, that you created basically a program for yourself, right? Like it was kind of like, this is what I needed. So thinking about the women that you're working with and the women that are coming to you, and just in general, why is it that we, like so many of us, end up in this cycle of really trying to get that ideal weight, like kind of that deeper, like, what is this about?
Look, for me personally, it really stemmed back to, and I'm a bit of an oversharer, but I lost my virginity when I was 17, and I just wanted to find someone to love me. And from that night, I thought that for men to love me, they needed to have sex with me, and they're only going to love me if I was skinny, and I wanted to be prettier and skinnier. So for me, it really stemmed so much back to I needed to be a certain weight to feel good about myself. And that weight for me was under 62 kilos. So I weigh like between 69 and 70 kilos now, and I'm 174 centimeters tall. So you can imagine how like slim I was with 8 kilos less on me. And, in order to maintain that body weight, I really had to cut calories and do a lot of cardio and exercise. And it just made me miserable. And I think when you're doing that, weight really isn't a good indicator of progress. We try and educate our women in our program. And what Craig really taught me to focus on is, Kitty, get your focus off the scales and start like, you want this toned and athletic physique. So he's like, train like a strength athlete instead of flogging yourself and starving yourself. He's like, build this strong, energized, capable body. And he really taught me how to strength train. And then I started to eat more food and I realized I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, I can't lift these weights if I only eat 1,200 calories. And I really just fell in love with that training. And this is not the same for everyone. Like we have women in our program who've lost 30 kilos, eating 2,400 calories, strength training 3 days a week. So if you've got a lot of fat to lose, you will lose weight. But if you're someone like me who's really restricted for a long period of time to maintain a lower body weight, lower body fat, I actually gained quite a bit of muscle and I gained a little bit of body fat because I was really lean, but now I'm in a much healthier body fat range. So I'd probably sit between 25 to 30% body fat, but I've also got a lot of muscle as well. And I think once I took that focus off the scale and started going, oh, okay, I've got to perform. I'm going to perform in the gym. I'm really going to do training that I actually enjoy. I didn't care about the weight anymore. The weight didn't mean anything to me. It was more about eating to feel good and sleep well. And like you say, have a regular menstrual cycle and pain-free menstrual cycle. And then being able to lift, like I've lifted some pretty heavy weights and I couldn't do that if I didn't eat food. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, like when you said if I only eat 1,200 calories, I won't be able to lift that weight. I thought that was a really interesting statement. I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit more. Like, is it because literally like you need the food in order to build the muscle to be able to lift the weight? Like
exactly.
Break it down for us.
But you've said it perfectly, Lisa. Like, and it really, I think women too, like, and I was the same, I overcomplicated it. I was like, I need to eat 1,200 calories. And yes, you will lose weight if you consistently eat low calories, but your body is going to prioritize survival over health always. So you'll lose weight, but your metabolism will downregulate, your temperature and pulse will drop. You'll start to see issues with your menstrual cycle like you do with all the women in your program. Digestive issues because your body's, down-regulating the production of stomach acid and enzymes that are needed for digestion. You end up with all of these issues because basically you're just not feeding your body. So instead of destroying the body you have with cardio and quick fix diets, it's like build the body you want. So, your body, it needs a certain amount of energy just to survive. So like we always talk about the menstrual cycle, it's a energy intensive process. So your body isn't going to want to reproduce when when it thinks that there's famine, so if you really want to build muscle, you have to eat enough to just maintain your daily energy expenditure plus a little bit more to actually build that muscle. And muscle is so great because it's metabolically expensive. It needs more calories to maintain and it burns fat at rest. So what we find with women when they come into our program is we find their, maintenance calorie range. And most women grossly underestimate what that is because they'll starve themselves in their binge. But, the majority of the women in our program are eating over 2,000 calories a day. They're strength training 3 days a week. And as they strength train and get stronger and their muscles, you break the muscle down while you're training and then it repairs itself and it becomes bigger and stronger so that you can then lift more weight. When they're eating at that calorie range, eventually it turns into a deficit. So what they find is that they're eating more food, but still losing body fat. And they're able to maintain that leaner physique while eating more food. Plus, it's a much more enjoyable process, obviously, than eating 12,000 calories and just starving yourself every day. Mm-hmm. Hope that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. So I feel like this is a good opportunity then to talk about some of the myths about weight loss. So, on this podcast, I really haven't talked a lot about weight loss. I can think of one episode right now where I interviewed Dr. Dennis Wilson, and he talked about some really interesting research because it's basically correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your wheelhouse. But it's like, if you want to lose weight, like if you have weight to lose and legitimately you want to lose weight, it's like the opposite of everything we've been told is true. So the top myths that come to my mind are that eating less calories is the way to go, first of all. So if you want to lose weight, like myth number 1, starve yourself. Myth number 2, like it's a good idea to exercise more and then eat less. And that is going to be, because we're in it's a math equation, right? So that's myth number 2. And then I would say myth number 3 is like just cardio, just steady state, like just do the same thing all the time and not do it. Yeah. I'll just I feel like I could just keep going a little bit, but what I think is interesting about that is that those are the ways to mess up your menstrual cycle and actually gain weight. So I just, take it away, Kitty.
So I really think context is important. So because this is why Craig and I in our program are so much into measuring and data, because it really gives you information about your body. And I don't believe that you should track your food forever. I don't track everything that I eat exactly now. I have a base diet because I train and I want to fuel my body. And I told you we're trying to have a baby. So it's really important for me to ensure that I'm eating enough calories to support my body. But, let's say you're a 100-kilo woman who's been doing 0 exercise and just sits in front of the TV all day and eats 4,000 calories. Eating less and doing some more exercise in that case would probably be a good idea. But most women aren't like that. Most women, the reason that they gain so much, there's obviously women that have gained a lot of weight and there's women who've restricted to be small. So you can't physically get to 100 kilos eating 1,200 calories. But what happens with most women is they restrict. So they might eat 1,200 calories for a period of time. And then you can only do that for so long. The biological response of your body is, I am starving, feed me. I'm craving sugar. I'm craving carbs. And then they go on these epic binges, because I used to do it every week. I'd be strict for 2 weeks and eat my 1,200 calories. And then I'd get so far and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. And then I'd eat corn chips and ice cream and crap, or I'd drink wine. And I'm sure women who are listening to this can relate. And then their metabolism slows down, so their body down-regulates. Also, they're eating crap food, vegetable oils, just really crappy takeaway food. And then they gain all this weight and then they're like, oh God, I've got to restrict again. So most women who've gained a lot of weight are stuck in this restriction binge cycle, and they find then, okay, they have to eat less to try and reduce their body weight. And then you've got women at the other end of the scale like me who really truly ate low calories a lot of the time, more than they binged, to maintain a lower level of body weight. So in either case, the answer isn't to eat 1,200 calories. The answer is to eat enough to adequately fuel your body so that you can sleep well, have good energy, have a normal regular menstrual cycle, and then strength train to build pro-metabolic muscle, because cardio doesn't build muscle. Cardio just burns energy, So let's say you're training 6 days a week and eating 1,500 calories a day. Where can you go from there? Are you going to do more cardio to lose more weight? And then what we find when women do that is they just need because you do need a calorie deficit to lose weight, but it's not that simple. It's not as simple as going eat 1,400 calories. But once you build a stronger, metabolic base where your body's actually healthy, your hormones are in check, and then you build muscle, what you'll find is that calorie deficit is small. So these women who are losing body fat in our program, they're eating 2,000 calories a day. They're only strength training 3 days a week. We encourage low intensity movement for recovery. So get out in the sun, walk your dog, get out into nature. You might want to go for a swim, but you don't need to be running 5-10 kilometers or doing boot camps and HIIT, because that doesn't build muscle. So I guess calories in, calories out does work, but not long-term for health or weight maintenance, at healthy weight maintenance. It just keeps you on this yo-yo cycle of restrict, binge, hormones get out of balance, you cycle, you have all these cycle issues, you have all these stages. Does that make sense?
It does. And I feel like, so to break it down a little bit more, it's interesting because it's like this, I remember that show, The Biggest Loser, that's what it's called, right? That American show. Yeah. And I mean, I don't even have TV, I don't have cable, and I cut my Netflix this year, so I don't have that either. Bye-bye, Netflix. That's another story for another podcast. But the point is that, so I remember that show, but I didn't watch it religiously or anything, but anyone who saw that show or is nodding their head, it was about punishment. I mean,
Exactly.
maybe that's why I couldn't watch it. Because I mean, you have these people that are quite overweight, and obviously they choose people for the shock factor because that's what they're going for with this show. But it really seemed like punishment. This whole idea that you need to punish yourself. It's like, and it's a cultural thing because it's like, right, like fat is bad. If you go to doctors, they'll shame you if they perceive you to be fat or overweight. And it's like, you did this to yourself. Like, it's really shamey. It's just not very nice overall. So it seems like, well, this is what they deserve. Like, you know what I'm not saying I believe this, but I'm saying that is definitely. So how much of that is internalized? I feel like this, it kind of, if you're doing this, the cardio, and obviously it would seem like that's what you should do. Like, this is, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. This is what they tell you. They tell you to like do all this cardio so that you can lose weight. And they tell you to eat less food. And so what you're saying, basically, it sounds like, is that it's not just about doing something. It sounds like we need to have a strategy for actually what's going to work best metabolically for our bodies. And so you can lose more weight, get stronger, eat more food, and have better results. And
it's got to be slow too. I think that's the thing. Like, the biggest lose, of course, is absolute extreme, like taking it to the extreme. And they lost so much weight so quickly, which is really unhealthy. And then their metabolism is adapted. I think if you are a woman who has a lot of body fat to lose, you have to remember that it didn't take you months to get there. It took you years. So like the women in our program who've lost 30 kilos plus, it's taken them 18 months plus to lose that slowly and safely, to get to a point where, you know, like I mentioned, and I talk about calories because I think the other thing too is women either grossly underestimate or overestimate the food that they're eating, and they don't eat consistently. So something that and I'm sure, you know, in your book too, is balancing your blood sugar is really important. We recommend that women, it works well in our program, is getting them to eat regularly, you know, well-balanced meals of protein, carbs, and fat, keeping the stress hormones low. Because I think a lot of women, and we've talked about this, you know, they get up, they're busy, they skip breakfast, they smash their coffee, they fasted all night, stress hormones are already high, you know, adrenaline and cortisol kick in to try and, you know, create fuel for your body. So you're just automatically starting the day on the back foot. So, you know, having that good quality breakfast in the morning when you wake up is really, really key. And, you know, your body craves consistency. And I think too, we live in a very stressful world. I'm not a mum personally, but, you know, mums with kids working, trying to train, and then we're not eating enough fuel to adequately fuel our body. So what happens? Well, your body, like we said, is always going to prioritize survival over long-term health. So the stress hormones kick in again. So your blood sugar is going up and down, up and down. And it seems so simple, but honestly, the women in our program that have got the best results just follow a simple process. You know, they plan ahead, they eat consistently, they eat their liver, you know, they eat the good quality, nutritious food, they strength train 3 days a week, they try and get stronger. And over a period of like 12 months, the body fat comes off, the body weight comes off if they need to lose body weight. They get healthier, their menstrual cycles normalize. You know, if they've got menopausal issues, they get better, and they've lost this body fat and they haven't had to starve themselves. But it's got to be slow, I think, too. That's another thing, is we're also conditioned to we feel terrible in our bodies, and being there where you just hate your body. You're in this place where you hate your body and you're like, oh God, I just want to get this off me now to feel better. But I think, you know, once you take that approach of, okay, this is going to take me probably 12 months, depending on where your starting point is. I'm going to focus on nourishing my body and sleeping well and feeling good and eating consistently and getting stronger in the gym. Suddenly you're like, okay, this is cool. It's taking me a bit longer, but I feel really good. You know, I'm getting stronger. I'm enjoying my training instead of, like you say, punishing myself for something that I ate, which I think is really key. And that's why I'm so passionate about the strength training, because I found it really helped me love my body and appreciate it for what it can do, rather than punishing myself with hours of cardio for like something that I ate yesterday, which I think so many women do.
Yeah. Well, and it's that whole mindset about it. We think it has to be hard. You know, that's basically kind of like programming. There was something that you said that I feel like I want to highlight again, which was kind of like, when you build that muscle, the muscle itself, you said muscle is expensive. I think you said that.
Pro-metabolic. It's pro-metabolic. Yeah. Metabolically expensive. Yeah.
Yes. That's what you said. Metabolically expensive. And I think that's interesting because it like what you what I heard you say was essentially that when you build the muscle, it's almost like you're making your body require more fuel. But yeah. I mean, I feel like I talk about that oftentimes in a different way because, you know, I have conversations regularly with clients who are really active or really athletic, and those athletic clients are working out 4 to 5 times a week. It often is very kind of extraneous activity. They don't necessarily identify as athletic, but they are athletes because they're at athlete level. And what you've seen and what I've seen and exactly what we're talking about is that they're often eating less. So let's talk. I'd love to hear you talk about intermittent fasting, because this is obviously a trend. You're in the fitness world, so you must see that a lot. You know, this trend of skipping breakfast and not eating. And just talk to us a little bit about how that could affect your training goals. If you're working with someone who actually does have some goals, they have some weight loss goals or some training goals, maybe they're, you know, working towards lifting or, you know, whatever the goal is, how can that type of strategy make it better or worse? Like, how does intermittent fasting affect it?
Well, and just to start with, I've done all the protocols of fasting for like 12 months. You know, I did the 16-8, the 5-2, you know, I did 24-hour fasts. And like, I think too, I just try to keep things really simple. It's like, imagine if you've got a car and you're going to drive it to the other side of Australia and you only put half a tank of fuel in. It's not going to make it, right? It's not going to have enough energy. So it's the same thing with your body. If you are trying to do all of this exercise and you're not eating enough, your body's not like a car. It doesn't just suddenly drop dead and stop working. It has built-in mechanisms to help it survive. So it releases stress hormones, adrenaline, and cortisol. So anytime you fast, like women always say to me, yeah, but I feel so amazing when I'm fast. I'm so alert. I'm like, well, that's because you're just running off stress hormones. I was the same. And you will feel good for a while, but those stress hormones are breaking down the thing that we want to build more of, which is muscle, because it's breaking down your skin, your thymus, and your muscle to release amino acids to be taken back to the liver to be converted to glucose. So, you know, you're sort of going, I want to build...
like interject? Because you're not eating, so your body is like eating
breaking yourself down. Yeah, totally. I know. But to me, like, it makes so much sense to me. And I think, oh, Kitty, you idiot. Like, why did you do all this? Because to me, I was like, it's just a quicker way to be skinny. It was quicker. Whereas building muscle and fueling your body and eating consistently takes time. It takes discipline. It takes persistence, you know, and it is, in a way, it's easier, but it's harder because you have to play the long game. So when you're constantly under eating and you're an athlete, think about, like, where does your body draw fuel from? It has to get it from somewhere. So like you said, you just literally are breaking down your body. You know, you deplete your body of progesterone, of minerals. If you do that year after year after year, that's when you're going to be in like some serious strife. I think you talk about it in your book, like women with osteoporosis, because they're not actually ovulating. So they're not making progesterone. So I think a lot of women, and I was under the same impression because I didn't know about the menstrual cycle. Like, oh, why do I need to ovulate? Like, I'm not trying to have a baby. Like, it doesn't matter, but it does matter because progesterone is this amazing hormone that, you know, helps with so many other things apart from just trying to fall pregnant. So I think, like, just think about it logically, ladies. Like, if you fast and you don't put any fuel in your car, your body, where does it get fuel from? Well, it just breaks down your muscle. And if you're trying to lift 100 kilo deadlift in the gym and you've got no fuel in the tank, do you think that's going to be easy, or do you think it's going to be hard? It's going to be fucking hard. It's really hard. Trust me. Like, there's no way that I could lift the weights that I could now with no fuel in the tank. So I think you've just got to, like, oh, no, I always think about like this, like, and that's why I love your book so much, because of the nutrition information is like, just go back to like your grandparents used to eat. That's how my grandma, she used to steak and kidney pie, liver, ice cream, good quality homemade ice cream, custards, beautiful roast meat, salads from her garden, fresh fruit. She'd squeeze orange juice, eggs, butter, ghee, lard, none of these disgusting vegetable oils, you know, processed vegetable oils, and just eating regularly and fueling your body to build muscle instead of destroying it with cardio and restrictive diets. And you'll look better too. Like, I think I look a million times better. I'm healthier. My skin's good. I can maintain a much healthier level of body fat eating way more food. So now I eat 2,600 calories minimum per day versus when I was starving myself, I was eating 1,600 to maintain that. It just really, I think women underestimate what they need, and you're not going to know until you track your food. Like, track a few days of food in like an app like MyFitnessPal, and you'll see, and you'll be like, a lot of women go, I'm only eating like 1,200 calories. And then on the weekend, they're like, oh my God, I just ate 5,000 calories because I smashed a bowl of wine and some chips and all this other food. So it's this like this all the time. Or you can't see what I'm doing, but up and down, up and down. So yeah, I just think fasting, and I don't know if you've probably read that Katharina Dalton's work, her books, The Progesterone Doctor, and
No,
she
not
talks.
yet.
Oh, she's amazing, and a lot of like similarities to your work. And she talks about that progesterone receptors don't actually work in the presence of adrenaline. When does your body release adrenaline? When your blood sugar's low. So if you're fasting and skipping breakfast, then your blood sugar's going to be low, adrenaline gets released, and your body the receptors can't do, progesterone can't do its job. So it just, when you dive a bit deeper into how the body works, you're just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense now. I was just starving myself this whole time when I didn't need to.
Well, and quick question for you, just to put it into perspective. So you mentioned, you're eating 2,600 calories a day minimum, you said. And so just generally, like, how often are you working out? Like, how many times a week?
So I only work out 3 to 4 days a week, strength training.
Okay. See, the reason I just want that qualifier, because I know the listeners who are actually like working out, who are more on the fitness train and who are tracking what they eat. So I typically don't talk about calories for a number of reasons, but I end up having to talk more about like protein, specifically protein amounts. Because what I find a lot, and I'm not sure if you found this as well, is that a lot of women first of all, they're just not eating enough, obviously. So there's that. But specifically, especially the women who are working out, I feel like we really underestimate how much protein we need, how much fat we need, and also obviously carbohydrates. So I'm certainly not anti-carb, and I'd be interested to hear where you've come, because you mentioned you've tried all the diets and you've done low carb. And so maybe talk to us about the blood sugar balance aspect of it, and also like the protein, like for your women who are training, like how much protein are they eating?
So Craig, because again, my Craig partner looks after all the coaching, we work off about 2 grams per kilo of body weight. So I weigh 69, 70 kilos. I actually eat about 160 grams of protein a day, but that includes, I eat quite a bit of collagen, like hydrolyzed collagen. So I'd probably eat 20 to 30 grams of collagen a day. And then the rest comes from dairy and fish and meat, cheese. But, I think a good rule of thumb, especially if you're heavy strength training and you're quite active, 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. I don't know because you guys talk in pounds.
It's roughly, and so this is all very interesting. It's roughly about 1 gram.
Yeah,
per pound. Maybe
because 2.2, hey.
If you're doing heavy strength training. But even just having that as if you work out a lot, just to give you a ballpark of how much. And it's interesting because that's exactly about the amount that I've been sharing with my clients, just as like an upper range for when you are doing a lot of training. Exercise. And honestly, that like having that conversation with someone, most of my clients are not 100 pounds, right? We're human women that are typically over 5 feet tall. And so that for many of us means over 100 grams of protein a day, maybe 120, 30, 40, 50, depending on how much exercise we're doing. And I feel like those type of numbers are what really kind of puts it into perspective for a lot of women.
And then
pairing it. Well, just to finish the thought, pairing it with also tracking, it's exactly what you said, because if you track weight, and I'm not for tracking forever, like you said, I'm for tracking for just a couple of days, just so that you see for yourself what generally is happening. And I've certainly seen that many, many times where, oh yeah, I'm sure it's all fine. But then when you actually track it, way less than what you think.
I think too, just on the tracking, something that really helped me, because I always tracked and it was about restricting. And then when I came into this pro-metabolic eating world, it was more around optimization and fueling my body to help me improve my sleep, digestion, menstrual cycle. So I had to really shift my perspective. And now, like I said, I don't track exactly what I eat, but I have a baseline. So like I know how much 2,600 calories, I eat similar foods mostly during the week. And on the weekend, I might have some different stuff just because I'm really busy. And like I said before, it's really important that I eat enough, because if I don't, like today, I'm squatting like 120 kilo squats. Like that takes a lot of energy. If I'm not fueled tonight, I'll sleep and then there's this flow on effect. But, I think it's, if you're a woman who's I really think if you're training and you want to be a better athlete, you've got to track your food, and you've got to track it to ensure you're eating enough. So you are recovering from training, you're sleeping well, your period, because if you don't eat enough, your cycle, like I notice issues with my cycle if I don't eat enough, like it'll shorten or I'll get cramps. And I'm like, oh, okay, kid, you got to eat more food. You got to eat more food, because it's really sensitive to that. So the tracking, I think, is really important if you're trying to achieve a certain result. And then once you get there, you can go, okay, I've got that baseline. I know how much I need to eat now. If I go under that, it's not going to support my body. And I think too, like with the carbs, and women will be surprised at this, like I eat over 300 grams of carbs a day, like between 300 to 400 grams. So 2 times the amount of protein plus. And a lot of women will go, oh, holy shit. Like, you know, but if you're eating 100 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs per day and 50 grams of fat is only like 1,650 calories. It's not a lot, you know. So I think, again, the tracking really shows you where you're at. Are you getting enough protein? Are you balancing your meals correctly? Like, I think view it as a data gathering process that's going to help you make some really informed decisions about your body and how you can actually optimize it and get it to your goal. Like, I actually find the tracking process, and with the cycle as well, like I really got into when I started, you know, tracking my cycle and doing the temps and pulses and looking at, I find it fascinating and going, oh, well, I ate this today. What was my temperature the next day? Or how did I recover from training? So I think if you go into it going, this isn't about restriction. This is about helping me become happy and healthy and strong, and giving me information about my body that I can use then to make choices about food and lifestyle. And if you can make that shift, I think it just becomes so much easier. So yeah, I think women, athletic women, 4 to 5 times a week. I mean, look, again, context is important. So Craig will do different training programs for women in our program. And there's a lady, this is just an example, you know, she can only train for half an hour a day, 6 days a week because of her kids. So she actually has a program where she trains 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, but the sessions are half an hour and they're very short, and then she can't lift as heavy weights. So her ability to recover is better. But, you know, someone like who's really wanting to get stronger, if you're squatting these heavy weights, you can't then go and back that up and do that again the next day. You know, you've got to allow your body time to actually recover. And I think that's where most women go wrong, is that they're training too much. They're not eating enough, and they're not giving their body enough time to recover. So now, like these days, I have a program, but if I need an extra rest day, I just take it. And then I just find I'm so much better. I'll hit PBs in the gym the next day, and I'll wake up and I'll feel leaner and more rested, you know. So I really think that's another important aspect is for women who are training is, listen, if you're tired, exhausted, flogging your body isn't going to help you. You're just adding layers of stress to an already stressed body. So, but I think, you know, like women have got this assumption that, like the fitness industry says, God, train every day. You know, there's no workout that you're not going to regret, you know. Like just stupid shit like that I used to do. And even when I was exhausted, I would just drag myself out of bed, smash the coffee. Then I'd be like patting myself on the back, like, good work, Kitty. You know, you did that workout. You were so tired. It's just so toxic. Like, I used to do it too. So I totally get it. But when you really get specific with your training and train to get stronger and really focus on that performance and listen to your body and rest, you're going to get so much more bang for your buck. You'll progress more. You'll look better. You'll feel better. And because I only do 2 sets of all my exercises, just about. I'll just do 2 sets of squats. My whole training program today is 4 exercises, 2 squats, 2 leg presses. 1 set of, I think it's step back lunges and then some lying leg curls. That's it. And people are like, is that enough? But it is when you're training at the right intensity and when you're lifting heavy weights, you can't lift more than that. Like your body just can't recover from it. But that's the thing. I think most women, more isn't always better.
I wanted to pop in with a quick message from today's sponsor, Audible. Did you know that you can listen to The Fifth Vital Sign for free when you sign up for a 30-day trial with Audible? Head over to fertilityfriday.com/audible for details. That's fertilityfriday.com/audible. Now let's jump back into today's episode. Well, there's so many pieces of what you were saying that are really interesting. I think there's women who are listening who think, well, I'm not, and rightfully so. Like they're like, I'm not training in the same way. I'm not lifting as heavy weights. I'm not doing that. And of course, that's a conversation for, maybe that's something that would make sense for you, depending on your goals. I suppose one thing that I was thinking as you were talking about it is I have this conversation with a lot of my clients where they are working out. Maybe they're doing CrossFit, which is its own conversation. Maybe they're doing training at home. Maybe they are doing lifts. Maybe they're doing whatever they're doing, but they are doing whatever they're doing 4 to 5 times a week. And they don't identify as an athlete. And I feel like a lot of the things that you talked about are really, really important. Even if you don't consider yourself an athlete, if you work out 4 to 5 times a week, that's 4 to 5 times more than most people. And so I feel like
yeah, you're right. And intensely too, like CrossFit is hardcore.
Yeah.
It's hardcore. It's intense.
Many women have lost their periods to CrossFit. And it's not necessarily CrossFit's fault. It's how you're doing it. So as you said, if you're doing a really intense workout, are you giving yourself enough rest? Are you eating enough food? Are you tracking your food to ensure you have enough? And I feel like that if there was one thing that all the listeners took from the episode, be that. Like, are you tracking your food to make sure you're eating enough? And so I really appreciate that, because I feel like it would be easy for some of the listeners to kind of hear what you said and think, well, that doesn't apply to me because I'm not an athlete. Kitty's obviously an athlete. She's working out, she's got these goals. But ultimately, if you are working out in a similar frequency, then I feel like that all applies to you because you are an athlete. If you work out 4 to 5 times a week, like accept it, look in the mirror and tell yourself, like, I'm athlete level here, and you need to start acting like it and taking care of yourself. 100%.
And I think too, like if you're thinking, or am I overtraining? Well, track some of the things that we track, like look at your resting temperature and pulse. So if your metabolism is good, then you should have a warm body. You should have a strong resting pulse. When your pulse is low, like people think that's a sign of fitness, but it's an adaptation to stress. Your body is trying to conserve energy and run on less. If you're not warm, if your body is cold, that's another sign that your body's adapted to stress. So, I take my temperature every morning, tracking the cycle, but you really see it in women who are overtraining is they've got these low resting temps and pulses. Am I sleeping through the night? Am I getting a 7? Obviously, unless kids or shit wake you up, you can't help that. But like, do you go to bed and wake up, after 7 to 8 hours? Like you say, your cycle that's a really good sign. Like if you got issues with your cycle, I'm like, that's showing that things, potentially you're doing too much and you're undernourished and you're not eating enough. Digestion, you shouldn't be bloated. You shouldn't have all these food intolerances. Like, you should just be able to eat a lot of foods without having any issues. People develop, like I was diagnosed with lactose intolerance when I was 12. I drank soy and almond milk for 17 years. Now I eat ice cream, drink milk, because I'm no longer, my digestive tract isn't stressed anymore. I'm fueling my body so my body can actually digest dairy. So I think, you can look, do I have a sex drive? If you've got no sex drive, that's another sign that, how's your skin quality? How's your energy? Is your hair thick or is it falling out? All of these things can tell you whether or not you're actually eating enough, I think, or not overtraining. Because that's what I find with the athlete women in our program that come in that are really, but it's not always the lean women. There's women at the other end of the scale who are the same, whose hair's falling out and they've got no libido and stuff. So, but I think those things are just really good to track, because it is possible to be, I believe, like, I guess it depends. Like I don't think you can be really lean and healthy. You just can't. Like there's a certain level of body fat, like that I've seen just from my experience working with women. If you're like under 20% body fat, they usually have cycle issues, because they're training a lot. But you can be within a healthy body fat range and have lots of muscle and like train hard and fuel your body and still have a healthy cycle and good subjective measures. But like you say, you've really got to prioritize rest, recovery, and eating enough. Like that is it's just so key.
Well, so I have a question for you. So for some of the listeners who are thinking, well, this sounds pretty intense. And if I'm lifting all those heavy weights, am I going to look like a dude if that's not my goal? So talk to us a little bit about some of that kind of, because I think a lot of women are working out because they want to be lean and skinny. They don't necessarily want to be muscular. And maybe that's what they're thinking. Like, this is going to make me really muscular.
Oh God, it's so hard to build muscle. Like it's taken me 7 years of like, and I'm committed to strength training. Like I train for powerlifting comps to build the muscle that I have, like you're only going to look bulky if you don't lose the fat. over the top. Like that's, like think about it, 5 kilos of muscle. And if you had 5 kilos of muscle and 5 kilos of fat together, what's going to be smaller? The muscle. So if you're a 70 kilo female at 25% body fat versus 70 at 35%, you're going to look way slimmer and more toned if you have more muscle. So like, just honestly, ladies, Craig always has a joke. He's like, tell them if they find the way to quickly put on muscle, tell me, because I'm still trying. Like it's really hard for women to put on heaps of muscle. It's hard. Like you've got to be really strong to, excuse my French, to look, to have a lot of muscle. It's just not possible. Like you're not going to turn into the Hulk. Trust me, it takes a long time.
I don't know if I expected that answer. I mean, that's really interesting. So, I mean, I exercise a little bit, but I'm not a big exercise person. You know what I mean? Like I'm not big into gyms. Like I have my beach body, like it's not an advertisement, but I have Insanity and I do that occasionally. And then literally I do the warm up. So I do like 10 minutes. I'm jumping around in my basement and doing all the things and then I'm done and then I stretch. So I'm not a big exercise person. And so this is really, really interesting and I think really reassuring. So, and I've heard it before. I've heard of the importance of women doing strength training for a number of different reasons. But I feel like one thing that certainly comes up from this conversation is kind of like doing what is working for your hormones, like do a type of exercise that is going to make your hormones work for you kind of thing. And so from that perspective, like doing that long, like 30 minutes of cardio 6 days a week puts you in a state where that raises your cortisol. And so many women have probably had the experience of working out 6 days a week, doing the 30 minutes of cardio or hour of cardio or whatever. You initially lose a little bit of weight, but then you gain it and you seem to be gaining more and you never actually end up getting to the size that you want. And that's doing it a different way is how to actually get the results like for your own body type.
Yeah, because when you build the muscle, you're just burning more calories all the time. So you really don't in the actual gym burn that many calories. Like in a training session, you're not going to burn a ton of calories, but it's the muscle that you build that will then obviously require more calories over time. And the stronger you are, like I'm pretty strong. I can deadlift double my body weight for 10 reps. I can bench. I actually wish that the world isn't crazy right now and that there would be a time when I could like fly to you and like go to the gym. It would be hilarious. Like if it ever happened, we'd have to put it on because it would be like ridiculous. You'd be lifting all this stuff and I'd be like sitting there with barely any weight. Yeah. Do you know what I think too, so Lisa? I always say to women, like, do what you enjoy as well. Like I love lifting. I find it so empowering. But if you're a woman who comes to me and says, Kitty, I want to look toned and athletic, you're going to have to lift some weights because the only way that you can build muscle is by progressive overload. So, but if your goal really isn't to like be that real toned athletic body, just do some strength training. And then, like you say, do the exercise you enjoy. Like I've got friends who do roller derby, or who surf. So it's like, go out and do activity that you enjoy and just eat enough to fuel your body. But
I really I like this conversation and I like how it's kind of dispelling some of those myths because I do think that there is a lot of value in, women, is it fair to say that women tend toward activities that aren't like weight bearing often. So they tend towards fitness classes and things that ironically don't always give them the results that they're looking for. And so even just that little bit of encouragement of adding some degree of strength training to your workouts and the potential benefit, and to the point that you could add in some strength training and potentially cut down the time even of your workouts, because you don't necessarily need to run for an hour. You could do strength training for, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, even my typically sessions.
I'm in the beginner group.
Yeah, well, of course. And don't I think a lot of women look at me and go, "Oh, Kitty, I would never be as strong as you." I'm like, you can do anything. You really don't understand what you're capable of. Like so many women come into our program with women in their 50s with zero experience lifting, and they're posting our Facebook going, "Oh my God, I just hit 100 kilo deadlift," which is so inspiring and so exciting for them. So you really can do anything if you put your mind to it and just take the time, because everyone starts at the bottom. And then if you just chip away and get a little bit better each session, in 12 months' time, you'll be deadlifting over 100 kilos. Like it is totally possible, but like anything, you're not going to go from 0 to 100 in a month. It's just that very gradual progression over time. But it's honestly is I just love it. Like even today, I just love my session today. I was thinking, oh, I can't wait to squat today. Like I'm just so excited about trying to hit these whatever weights I've got in my program. Like it's just the most and you don't always get it. When women come into our program, we customize programs for them based on their experience level, what equipment they have access to, any injuries they have, time commitments again. So it's about what can you be consistent with? Most women in our program just train 3 days a week because they're mums with kids. They don't have time to spend hours and hours in the gym. But again, I've got women who've lost 10 kilos training 3 days a week. And it's perfect. They can fit it in their schedule. You get so much bang for your buck. And then, like I said, the movement's important too. Like I think everyone should move every day. Some sort of activity, if you can, to get in sun. Like sunshine, vitamin D is so important as well. Like I walk my dog Winston every day. Yeah.
Well, so one question that I wanted to ask before we kind of wrap up for the day was about men versus women. So it's kind of a nod to the conversation we had about intermittent fasting, because what I'm hearing from you is essentially eat 3 meals a day, eat enough food, consider the type of exercise that you're doing, add some degree of strength training if you are into exercise, and just find with this different way of looking at it, it's about being healthy, being strong, feeling good, being fit. But it's like all of these things, which is really refreshing to hear. And it's also what I'm also hearing from you is that like I was able to get to the weight that I wanted to feel good about myself, and I didn't have to starve. In fact, I had to eat more food to support my training. And I feel like this is a really interesting message from this. But I think that the challenge is that so many of us follow these male influencers. I did a whole podcast on it. I've called them out already, so I don't need to do that again. But ultimately, we see men have really great results from doing things differently. So many men can do this intermittent fasting and the weight training, and they seem to have incredible results from a different strategy. So maybe share your experiences with how men and women are different in that respect.
Do you know what though, Lisa? I'd really like to question their subjective and objective measures of metabolism. So yes, they may get good fat loss results and they may look lean and muscular, but I guarantee that their resting temperature and pulse will be low.
Oh, this is so good. This is so interesting.
But it's true though. Like look at all, they might have hair loss, low libido. So interesting. Craig and I because Craig follows a lot of other like bodybuilders and powerlifters and listens to because he's right into that. And there's this guy that he followed and he was just talking about how when he was at quite low body fat, 8%, 5 to 8%, he really low libido, low energy, couldn't train properly. He didn't talk about the temps and pulses, but then obviously when he brought his body fat levels up to a higher, more healthier amount, everything got better. So I would argue that, they do get good fat loss results and look good, but so did I when I did fasting. I was lean. I still trained, but I felt like I didn't sleep. My menstrual cycle was so it's like anything will probably get you good results in terms of how you look. Like if you can stick to it long enough, because some women have really great willpower and they can flog themselves and they look so I get women text me and go, oh, but I've got this friend and she fasts and she runs and she trains 6 days a week. She looks amazing. I'm like, yeah, but she'd be fucked. These fitness so many of them come out and say, oh, I've got digestive issues and haven't had a menstrual cycle for so long and I've got these binge eating issues. So anything works to lose weight, but at the expense of what? At the expense of your health. So again, I would just say I don't believe that these men would have optimal health markers either, probably being super lean. And so for example, Craig eats and trains the same as me. He trains the same. He eats more than me because obviously he's a man, but he does his training. He eats 6 meals a day like me. He eats the similar foods as me. He eats the foods he likes, but he eats dairy and he eats meat and he eats cheese and whatever, but the foods that he likes. So I would actually argue that for optimal health, it's the same for women and men. They still need to fuel their bodies. They still need to eat enough. They still need to have rest from training. I just think that maybe women's bodies are more sensitive to calorie cuts, I think. Men might be able to get away with more for longer before seeing some negative health impacts, whereas women, I think, just due to obviously we reproduce, we will see those impacts of that quicker, I think. So, yeah, I would argue that probably a lot of these guys don't talk about the negative health impacts of what they're doing. Because I think, like it's not healthy to be grossly overweight, but it's also not healthy to be shredded and exercising 6 days a week and fasting for anyone, male
and having
or
like
female.
no fat on your body.
Nah, like, yeah, I think we just like, and I was the same. I was always like, I've got to be leaner. I want to look leaner, but it's just not healthy. Like there's a certain level of body fat you get under, and then your body's like, oh, it's famine. I can't perform in the gym. I'm not going to sleep well. My cycle's affected. I just think if women could just build a bit more muscle too. Like a lot of women say to me, oh, you look heaps leaner than you actually are. But it's only because I've got so much muscle. So I'm like, instead of focusing on dieting to get lean, build some muscle, eat to build some muscle, like it's just, and you'll feel so much better too.
That is, again, I don't know that I expected that answer. And I think that's really great. I feel, because I've been saying this kind of thing for a while about how women aren't necessarily getting the results as men, but I'm not necessarily thinking about those men and asking if they themselves are healthy. And I mean, we live in the world of the internet where everyone takes selfies all the time and posts it. Well, not everyone, but it's a thing. And so we can often get mired in that kind of like front facing presentation that people are doing and believing that that's also like a person's front stage isn't their backstage. They don't always look like that. And you don't know what's going on in their lives. And so I feel like that was a really fantastic kind of reorientation with both men and women. Regardless of how a person looks, it isn't healthy. So I personally, I'm very aware of that from the female angle. And so I'm the first one to say, if you're following all these women who work out a ton and are super skinny, you don't know that they're having a period at all, because many of them are not, or they have cycle challenges, especially even just for a period of time. And even in the research, women who are athletes are much more likely to have cycle disruptions and irregularities. And so following the practices of those who potentially aren't healthy isn't going to necessarily work for you. But I feel like what you said really put it into perspective with regards to just all across the board. So this could have worked for him and that could have been great, but you don't know what's going on for him and if he's healthy.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, just look at your own body, and everyone's lives are different. Like we've got women in our program who sit at lower levels of body fat relative to other women that still have good subjective measures, but their life is so set up to be really consistent, like low stress. They take all their food with them. They eat so consistently. They track everything. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but in order to be leaner and still remain healthy, you've got to really be so consistent. Like you can't, and your life has got to be set up and stress-free. And most women aren't set up like that. Like most women have stress in their lives, and I really do believe that you can find a balance. Like I really feel like, because I've been at every end of the scale, like I've had no period for 7 months. I've been so lean, so light. And then I've been at the other end of the scale where I just don't give a shit. Like my heaviest I've probably been, it's not like I've never been overweight, but I just have, and I've drunk more alcohol and not been as consistent. But now I feel like I've got this really good balance where I just am generally like really happy in my skin and my body. Like I really love my body and I love what it can do and I feel good and I've got that good balance, like I eat similar foods during the week and I am quite structured and regimented with my food because like I said, I need to fuel my body. But we went out to dinner with some friends on the weekend and we just ate the food at the restaurant and I didn't freak out and go, oh my God, like this doesn't fit my macros. So I do believe that you can have a good balance and it's about finding what works for you and what makes you happy. And that's going to be different for everyone. But I think, being ultra lean, it's just never healthy. It's not. Like, yeah.
I see your point. And I mean, from a menstrual cycle perspective, it is really hard to be excessively thin to have where you don't necessarily have enough body fat on you. And to have a healthy cycle for sure. And if the cycle is the marker of health, then ultimately that is what you should be looking at. And this is again why at the end of the day I always bring it back to the menstrual cycle, because and this is why I'll just like the another hill that I'll die on, which is that the menstrual cycle is a sign of health. And also it really you can't follow what other people are doing when you're paying attention to your menstrual cycle. And I feel like even this episode is a really great example of like if you're training, then your cycle will guide you in terms of what you need, in terms of how much you need to eat and what that needs to look like for you. For women who aren't training as heavily or as much, again, they can follow their cycle. Once the cycle starts to be disrupted, the luteal phase is a particularly good I mean, the whole thing, but ultimately the luteal phase is a great way to track in terms of how your body is responding to your exercise routine, because it's very, very sensitive. As you said, it'll get shorter. You'll have the spotting, you'll have PMS raging symptoms, which are a sign of low progesterone. So all of those things can help you tailor this to you. And what I always say too is, like, it doesn't matter what you say or what I say or what the listener thinks about their cycle. What matters is your cycle healthy? Because that is the objective kind of marker from my perspective. Like, you can say, oh, it's all fine and everything is working great. But if you lose your period, it's not fine and it's not great. And that's the end of it.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, and that's why we get women to track it along with other markers that just show them, is their body too stressed? Are they eating enough? And you know what? It is challenging because it goes against everything that the fitness industry says. And it's really like, you have to play the long game. Like, it's not a quick thing, it's to do it in a healthy way takes persistence, commitment to the path, even when your head might be screaming at you to go cut the calories and do more cardio. I've just got to, we do these round tables every fortnight. They're like mindset things with another lady in our program. She's a psychotherapist. And, a lot of women get on and talk about their challenges around being consistent and how, like, because this approach is about, it's not quick weight loss, it's fueling your body and getting you healthy and strong, and how a lot of them struggle with, I've always just cut calories to control my weight, to control things in my life. And I can't do that with this. And it's really challenging. So I think it really forces you maybe to dig up demons around why you're doing this. Like, again, for me, it was always back to the body image and wanting to find a man and thinking if I was skinnier and prettier, and if I had the implants put in, and then I had the implants removed in December last year. And it's just this, like, I think for so many women, it just goes so much deeper than health. Yeah.
This crazy world that we live in that makes us feel like we need to, like, right? I mean, that's what this is, like, a result of all of the messaging, and this is what is pretty is, and this is what we need to look like, and this is how we can validate ourselves, and this is related to my self-worth. I mean, it's so deep, and that would be a whole other podcast.
Yeah. It's this constant battle, isn't it? Really, like, you think on Instagram, even I have to, like, when I got my boobs out, they were like, obviously, because I had these huge implants in them that just dragged them down for 7 years. They obviously don't look like that. And they're quite saggy, and they had these big divots. And, I would look in the mirror and I'd think, oh God, Kitty, they look terrible. And then I'd have to remind myself and go, Kitty, just remember why you did this. Like, you did this for your health, and, you've got to learn to love and appreciate your natural breasts. You're 40, you're not 20. They're not going to look really perky. And it's helped that, I've got a good partner who's like, I just love you. I love your boobs however they are, Kitty. I love you for you, like, I love your natural sexy boobs. So I think it really does take that consistent, like, talking to yourself in a way that you're trying to, like, love. I mean, it's okay, I think, to want to improve your body. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to lose some body fat, but if you do it in the right way, you can be healthy and happy. And I find that when I'm the most consistent with my nutrition and eating regularly, feeling my body, and I'm strength training Sicily, my body looks the best anyway. My skin glows, I'm healthy. So I think it's a struggle. Like, you scroll through Instagram and there's just so many fitness models that are so lean, and you think, sometimes I think, oh, they look so good. I'm like, no, Kitty, no, like.
Well, you know what? So I'll throw in there, for me, like, if you looked at my Instagram feed, I don't follow a lot of fitness people, so I don't actually see that stuff in my feed. And so I feel like this whole era of, I was born in the 80s, and so I grew up without feeds. There was no social media, therefore there was no feeds. And you similarly, because we're around the same age. And so I think ultimately a piece of advice that is unsolicited here is, if your feed is full of that, like, skinny, lean people or whatever, like, you don't have to even unfollow, just like what's the word? Like, when you like, you still like them, but you
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Mute them.
Yeah. Remove the trigger. Trigger. Yeah.
And then, so you don't need to see that. If you've got stuff scrolling every day that makes you feel bad about yourself, then stop. Yes. But so, with that said, so for the listeners who've kind of been along with us for this whole journey of this conversation, which I think was really, I really loved this conversation, and I love that we dived into this topic. And as I mentioned, it's not one that I talk about a lot on the show, like weight loss, fitness. And so I'm really excited just to be able to share this with everybody. So if you think about the listeners who've kind of been with us, what, if anything, would you want them to know? And then please do share a little bit about you, where people can find you, about your products and your product line, and the things that are coming kind of down the pipe.
Oh, I don't know. God, there's so much. But I think maybe just track your food for a few days and see how much you're eating. and just gradually try and, like, women, I don't believe should be eating anything less than 2,000 calories a day, like especially if they're training. But if you've been consistently under eating, if you go from eating 1,200 calories to 2,000, you're going to probably put on body fat. So increase your calories slowly. Don't be afraid to eat carbs, try and eat enough protein and just start there. And then, focus on how you're feeling. Like Lisa said, track your menstrual cycle. It's such a great indicator into your actual health, your sleep, your digestion, your mood, your energy. And don't be afraid to eat and take rest days if you're training. Training intensely 4 to 5 days a week is going to be hard on your body. So if you're really doing that, you need to eat. Ladies, like, I just can't stress enough, like, just eat instead of under eating and then binge eating, eat more consistently every day. And for those who are binge eaters, that just stopped my binge eating, like, because I was actually giving my body what it needed. And then in terms of where to find us, I'm on Instagram as Kitty, so it's KITTYBLOMFIELD, and our website is www.newstrength, it's NUSTRENGTH.com.au, and we've got our supplement and skincare coming, Saturate, so it's Saturate, SATUREE.com.au. And yeah, we've got I sent Lisa some of our products, and we've got the Peat for free, which is polyunsaturated fats. Probably women are going, what the hell is she talking about? And that would be a podcast for another time. That fully saturated skincare with no nasties. And we've got some makeup coming as well, which is really, really, really cool. So yeah, my business partner, Emma, she's awesome as well, actually. Follow her. She's the nutrition coach on Instagram. She's the one that really introduced me to this pro-metabolic eating. And I remember when I did my first consult, she's like, Kitty, you should be eating 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day. And I was like, what? But now that I do it, I'm like, okay, that makes so much sense. Yeah, ladies, just, I don't know, start fueling your body. Fuel your body. You'll feel so much better. Train for enjoyment and performance instead of punishment.
Oh, I love it. I feel like this approach, I think what I really love about it, it's like, it's kind of for women by women, kind of, right? It's like a combined, but you know what I mean? And it's based on what actually works for our bodies. And that's what I like about it. Because what works. That's the interesting thing about it. Like, if it works, it just works. So, and if it works, your cycle is going to be good. And so thank you so much for being with us, Kitty. This was great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/370. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Kitty. I mean, what an interesting conversation. I think that ultimately this conversation challenges a lot of the myths that permeate our culture about weight loss. And it's kind of refreshing to hear a different take and also a woman-centered approach. I feel like it was really fascinating to listen to someone who specializes in this area, in the area of health and fitness, but works specifically with women and also works specifically with the menstrual cycle. So having those kinds of checks, so checking in with the metabolism, right, the basal body temperature, and also checking in with the cycle as a way to make sure and gauge whether we're actually working with this woman's body and achieving hormonal balance. So I feel like it's a really interesting approach that you don't really hear a lot. You don't really hear a lot of approaches where you're looking at fitness from that women-centered perspective, and you're also balancing her hormones as kind of just a regular part of it. So we're kind of looking at the cycle as a feedback tool and using that to gauge how successful this routine is going to be. And so that is ultimately what I have been saying on repeat for, the better part of the last 2 decades, which is that the menstrual cycle is a vital sign and it responds to our bodies, our health in a number of different ways. And ultimately, we can use it as a way to gauge how we're doing. And so if you are, adding in a new exercise routine or you currently have an exercise routine, I think it's really important to learn about your cycle and how you can use your cycle to kind of optimize what you're doing. And so more specifically, if you have a sense of what the normal cycle parameters are, and you have a sense of when ovulation typically happens in your cycle and the period of time between ovulation and your next period, so the luteal phase, when you are overdoing it, then those are kind of 2 main areas that you might see a shift. So you may see a delayed ovulation, or you may more likely see kind of a shortened luteal phase premenstrual spotting, increased PMS symptoms, because if you're overdoing it and not necessarily consuming enough to offset that, then it makes it really hard for your body to sustain the optimal level of progesterone that is needed to give you a healthy cycle throughout the whole time. And so what I really appreciate were some of the myths that we dispelled in today's episode. The myth that if you want to lose weight, you have to eat less calories. So the myth that it has to be painful. So it's kind of like that, the Biggest Loser example, where it's like you're supposed to basically kill yourself by doing all this cardio, punish yourself, and then you're supposed to eat less. And I don't know about you, but every time I start exercising, I'm more hungry. So certainly when I incorporate exercise, I need to eat more. Personally, that's my thing. And so even the idea of exercising a ton and being really intense with the exercise and not eating, I mean, ever since I was a little girl, when I was in high school, every time I exercised, I just really needed to eat a lot more because I needed to be able to sustain the muscle building that was taking place and all that. And that wasn't something I really knew about consciously, but certainly I was able to kind of tune into those signs. And so hopefully this episode just gives some food for thought in terms of different ways to do it. And what I thought was interesting as well is even to think about exercise differently, because it's not just one category. And so there is a lot of research to show that steady state exercise, so kind of doing the same thing at about the same level for a long period of time, certainly can help initially with weight loss, but over time, it can increase your stress hormones, which can then kind of give that effect of like you initially lose weight and then you start gaining it. And it seems counterintuitive because you're exercising so much versus weight training, which is what we really focused on in today's episode, or even the intermittent high intensity, where you do a short burst of high intensity and then have more breaks. And certainly I'm not a fitness expert, but I feel like the purpose of talking about this is just to say what we've been taught about exercise, like, you know, work out, eat less, right? Like that kind of thing, as if we're a robot and this is a math equation. It doesn't work with our hormones. And so if there's one thing you take away from today's episode, it's tune into your cycle. You know, if your cycle, if you're noticing those kind of changes that we talked about, you know, shorter luteal phase, premenstrual spotting, if you notice increased PMS symptoms, or if this is something that you've had for a long time and you just think it's normal for you and you're kind of like a moderate to heavy exerciser, this is a way for you to really gauge. And I suppose the last thing to say is that this episode shows that it is actually possible to exercise in such a way that you can optimize your weight loss and your toning. You don't need to starve yourself and restrict, and you can have the results that you're looking for without having to feel like you always have to kind of restrict yourself and like prevent yourself from consuming food. So I feel like if anything is that you're taking away from today's episode, I really do hope that it's that. So with that said, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, whenever you're tuning into the show. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.